Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to this final session in this room, which is promoting extended producer responsibility, EPR, the plastic waste and the role of multi-stakeholder engagement. And just kick us off, we have Mr. Rolf Pyatt. So, Rolf, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me try. There's a podium you have to stand on here. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome to those who are online as well, and my distinguished panelists here this afternoon. And just wanted to say it's fitting, I think we have our final session here, being led by our two co-chairs, Ross here. Yes, Thomas here. So thank you so much for your leadership. I think the leadership that we started in Seychelles just before COVID locked us down. And here we are today with having done so much work, I think, over the last 2.5 years, right? Something like that, 2.5 years. And we didn't stop. And that's something which we really promised ourselves when we went the lockdown, that we would continue with the work. And I'm really, really happy with the work and the progress of the Plastic Waste Partnership, which of course been reported here at this COP. So I just wanted to thank both of you for your leadership, and also for all the partners, for all the donors that are making this partnership a reality and really addressing the issues on the ground. As you know, we've got 23 pilot projects and growing, and I think we have a lot more coming. We also had the photo competition, which was a huge success. We even had the photos exhibited in Geneva. Here you can get the posters up at the document section. So I think it was really a great opportunity for us to engage young people and young photographers in such an important activity. And I'm looking forward to that photo competition growing even more in the future. And I think it was Ole and Ross who came up with the idea of a plastics forum. So this is where we had 3 days of events, side events here focusing on plastics, but really highlighting the work that we started here, and also giving a boost to the work that started in Dakar just a few weeks ago. Well, last week or earlier this week, last week. See, I'm losing track of everything here. And and I think it is fitting that we are giving that kind of boost and motivation to the work of the new INC on plastics. And as you all know, the 3 conventions will continue to play an important role in addressing plastics as well. Extended producer responsibility is something we talk about. I think we have many examples around the world, and I would leave it to the panels to give us the wonderful examples. But I think it's a powerful way in which we can start addressing, especially some forms of plastics. And already there's a number of successful initiatives that are being held and done around the world based upon EPR. And in fact, I can remember, as far as growing up in Seychelles in the 1970s, don't guess my age, I'm still very young, where we had glass bottles by the local brewery. We had only one brewery in Seychelles, and we had a returnable bottle system with deposit for like 20-30 years. And then suddenly the people started traveling, and they saw PET bottles and they saw can, and they told the brewery, we want PET bottles and cans because we want to modernize. And suddenly we were overcome by, of course, millions and thousands of PET bottles and cans. And today there is a rethinking on going back to glass bottles. And in fact, some of the beverages are now back into glass bottles. So again, showing this, I won't call it circular economy, but circular reminder that the things that we had since a long time ago do work and do have an environmental benefit. And I think, I hope this will also come out this evening. So I know it's Friday evening, but you need to stay up until 10 o'clock because we have the lighting ceremony. So don't go away, don't go to sleep. Tomorrow is a sleeping day. So I would like to welcome you and see you at the Palais des Nations very soon for us to enjoy the symbolic lighting of the Palais des Nations. So Paul, thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Rob. Lovely. And now we'd like to introduce Ross. Ross, can I invite you to your keynote, please? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Get used to the podium. I need the microphone. Yes. Well, thank you really to everyone that's participated in the forum. It's much bigger than I was thinking when we were early days, and it really is looking good. All the participation, all the help we've got, particularly from the Secretariat and all the people that have booths and participating in panels and things. So it's gone more than I could even imagine. So a great success. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here. And I'll start with talking of a film from 1967. I was a little bit reluctant to do this, but there we are. 1967, the film The Graduate, starring Dustin Hoffman and with Catherine Ross, a namesake, not quite. And so Dustin was playing the graduate, Benjamin, and he was being advised by Mr. Maguire next to the pool and of what he should do, what he should think about for his future. And Mr. Maguire says one word: plastic. And that was 1967. Population in 1967 was 25 million, less than 25 billion people, sorry, 35 billion people. And the production of plastic was less than 25 million tons. And now we are over half a century later, and plastic production is over 400 million tons a year, and the population is 7.9 billion. So the population has gone up 2 times, and the production of plastic has gone up 16 times. Now, waste management can be the single biggest budget item for cities in low-income economies. It's about 20% of the budget, and that goes on waste management. But 90% of the waste is openly dumped or burned. Now, looking at the data that's been gathered through the partnership and from other sources, the storytelling is that less than 10% of the plastic is being recycled. And the reason for this is the other 90% is not getting collected. It doesn't have the economic value to make it worthwhile to be collected and recycled. It doesn't recycle itself. If it was gold, it wouldn't be sitting out anywhere other than in the hands of people that want the valuable material. It isn't. It doesn't have that value. So there is an issue with that. And EPR policies can address that problem, and they can bring the plastic back into the system, into the circular economy. So EPR systems. There are 4 broad categories of EPR instruments, sometimes used together. You need good to have a combination of instruments to keep things going well and in the right direction. There is a product take back. There's economic and market-based instruments, and within that is a deposit refund. And Ralph mentioned that, and I also remember pop bottles with a deposit on, and that gave a little bit of pocket money extra if you took the bottle back. And so I'm glad that sits under EPR schemes because that's something we can all relate to. So I can say actually in most countries I've lived in around the world, there has been EPR of some sort because that gets captured in it. So living with EPR nearly all my life, but the more complex systems, of course, one finds with lots of legislation backing and all other instruments to go along with them. So I mentioned deposit refund. There's also regulations and performance standards. In amongst that is minimum recycled content. And that's something, of course, I'm from the recycling sector, from the World Federation of Recycling Industries, and we would promote minimum recycled content on that own. That drives the market. We also need a market if we're going to recycle something that we need somewhere to sell it to. So there are regulation, performance standards, and there's also information-based systems. Now, talk about the goals and objectives of EPR. Well, it's to increase waste prevention, the reuse of products, and the recycling of wastes, to close the material use loops and to promote sustainable development, and to ensure the removal of hazardous components and parts before recovery and final disposal, and reducing the amount of materials going for final disposal. And yes, internalizing the cost of waste management into product prices. And this is an interesting part, of course. It reduces the cost of waste management borne by municipalities and or taxpayers. So it is an alternative to a general tax and household taxes. So it's more focused than that. Now, there are minimum requirements for EPR instruments to be successful. I don't want to go through the whole shopping list of these things. I'll pick out a few that I think are particularly important, of concern, of course, for also my companies. Need a clear and transparent rules for setting out the responsibilities of all stakeholders. We have, is that screen still on or is it gone? Gone blank. Did I touch something? So need clear and transparent rules and roles for the responsibilities of all stakeholders. Need an adequate level of competition to avoid monopolies. It's also always of concern. And the EPR instrument should ensure equal treatment of stakeholders and non-discrimination. And that's between the producers themselves, between the producer responsibility organizations, and between the public and private waste operators. There are quite some complexities to EPR, and I'm sure when one gets into it, you look into leakage, costs, fees, this mentioned already, transparency, and the need for monitoring and surveillance and enforcement. So where would you get all this information from? Well, the Basel Convention has tools for environmentally sound management, and they are available on the website. And it is actually, the tools, they're an easy read and easier than the manual from the OECD on guidelines for governments on EPR. So you can look for the tools, and they're as up to date as indeed that updated OECD guidance. There is also in the Plastic Waste Partnership in Project Group 2, and that's Marco Belletti gave a presentation on it yesterday, and they have gathered information on EPR schemes, and they've analyzed some 15 country replies, and they've grouped them together, an interesting analysis so countries can learn from experiences. So that's where you can get information from. And also then where to start, besides reading into this, there is a need to share experiences, as not one size fits all. And details of EPR schemes do matter. And so it would be up to parties to consider whether to set up an EPR forum in the Basel Convention space, where EPR, those that are involved in setting up EPR systems and those that are within the EPR systems could come together and showcase their systems, and where others may compare how they're performing. I think parties could consider setting up an annual EPR forum And I just put that suggestion out there because these instruments, you do have to look around. There are so many nuances and differences depending on the societies that they're operating in, the countries they're operating in. It's an interesting, it really is an interesting tool with really benefits for all those that are engaged with it. So I thank you for that, and wait for the interesting interventions from the panelists. Thank you.
Great stuff, Ross. Thanks very much, Ross, to a great start. I just want to check, they can see us and we can see you. Yeah, good stuff. Nothing worse than being an online panelist and realizing maybe no one can see you. So great that they've joined us. Thanks very much. I just would like to now introduce our panelists. And in the interest of time, if you'll excuse me, and I hope you'll excuse me too, I won't do your short bio that I invited, and I'll just get everybody's name and job title, if that's okay. We're joined by Mamahala Moschini, who's the Deputy Director General, Chemicals and Waste Management, Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment in South Africa. Welcome, Mamahala. Daniel Hinchcliffe from GIZ. Welcome, Daniel. Lark Williams, Department of State, United States. Welcome. And online, hello there, we have Leah Helena Monteiro de Lima Dimanche from the Sao Paulo State Environment Agency. Welcome, nice to see you. And in Germany, we have Bernhard. Apologies if I get the pronunciation wrong. Bernhard, is it Bauska? WWF, welcome.
Yeah, that's correct, thank you.
Okay, great to see you and welcome. It's great that you're here. We have a series of questions and we hope to invite compelling, enlightening, frightening questions from the audience if necessary. So we'll start with these first. Go ahead, Brian. Oh, hang on. Go ahead. Not yet. We're just going to have a first question here, run through the panel, and then I'm going to open it to you. Good man, Brian. Love it. Thank you, Brian. And by the way, everybody, Brian's the first speaker on the questions. Thanks, Brian. So, Mamahala, can we start with you? We have a question for you that's prepared. You represent South Africa, a recognized leader on the African continent in launching an EPR program for plastic packaging. Can you please tell us about your initial steps for setting up this program and share with us what is essential to get it to work right for you? Now, we know you could probably speak for a week on this, but I'm just trying to hold these initial responses to about 3 minutes, if that's at all possible. Thank you, Mamahala.
Yes, South Africa, we've just formalized our mandatory EPR scheme for packaging and some other single-use products. But I need to mention that before we went into the regulated EPR, we had voluntary EPR schemes that were running. But because of the free riders, which is not fair to those that were paying to ensure that at the end of life, their products are managed. So we needed to ensure that we come in as an authority to assist. We have started November last year. The registration went on for all the producers. Not everybody came in. So in terms of compliance, we are also facilitating that process of dealing with those that are not complying. But I need to mention that specifically for packaging, we do have an informal sector, waste pickers. So we needed to ensure that our EPR scheme also reflects and recognize their contribution. In terms of the contribution, about 80 to 90% of packaging that went into recycling, they are the ones that are collecting it. So we needed to ensure that they will also benefit in terms of getting compensation for the collection service that they are contributing to. So those are the issues that we are grappling with. I know we do have issues with regard to EPR fee setting guidance, and those are some of the issues that we will be learning from other parties that have been implementing mandatory EPR schemes for a while.
Well, great stuff, Mamahala. Thank you very much. And now, Daniel, we have your question. Based on GIZ's experience on promoting EPR in developing countries, what are the key challenges you encountered, and what would be potential solutions to those?
Yeah, thank you very much. So, I mean, I normally work a bit on electronic waste management, but I have many colleagues also working on plastics and a lot of experiences they have as well on EPR plastics. I think one of the challenges with EPR is that it's quite a complicated policy instrument, which needs to have wide agreement, transparency assured between all the different stakeholders in the system. And getting that agreement can take several years. And we see in many countries that maybe sometimes the draft legislation is set up, but it could take maybe 5-10 years before this is actually even passed. And I think this is where a lot of countries sort of make initial progress, but then things get a bit stuck. And even if it's slower than passed, it can also sometimes take several years before it becomes operational and the implementation is there. So we're also coordinating the Prevent Waste Alliance. This is an alliance of over 300 organizations for circular economy. And in this alliance, we've also developed an EPR toolbox. This goes through a number of the different topics in setting up an EPR and 14 different fact sheets. So this can also act as a support. And we've been supporting some countries to apply these principles in different countries, such as Ghana and Vietnam. But I think one of the main things that needs to be done is really just to start. And I think these voluntary schemes can really be one way to get the system running. Once you start to have some administrative processes in place, it's then possible to come in and bring in a wider legislation. And really then the next point is enforcement. So many countries have also passed legislation a long time ago. I mean, one example is India in 2011 on e-waste. They passed something. Then nothing happened for 5 years. In 2016, they came again, and this time they followed up with enforcement and started penalizing the actors who didn't comply. And now we start to see the producers are paying into the EPR system, things start to move. So get something running, then you learn from this. It's an iterative process. You don't have to be scared, and just make sure it's involving all the stakeholders. And then we can start to change this as it goes forward. But I think my 3 minutes are up, so.
That was great stuff. Thanks both, because it's really great to get these stories from the front line, so we can all share the challenges and potential solutions. And now, Leah, if it's okay, we'll come to you and have a question for you. Once EPR is up and running, what supporting activities are needed to optimize the system, such as addressing free riders, unidentified importers and producers? Over to you, Leah. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Effective state oversight related to the fulfillment of extended producer responsibility is important to avoid unfair competitiveness between companies that bear the costs of collecting post-consumer waste and those that are not complying with EPR rules. In Brazil, EPR is mandatory for specific products and packages, and the responsibility to receive the waste from consumers is shared by manufacturers, importers, traders, and distributors. In a pioneering initiative in Brazil, the state of São Paulo included compliance with EPR rules as a condition for obtaining environmental permits in the state. Such requirements came into force in 2018 for products and packages such as agrochemicals, tires, light bulbs, batteries, lubricating oil, wall painting, electronics, medicines, lubricating oil filters, food, beverages, cleaning products, personal hygiene, and cosmetics. So it's a wide range of products and packages. And if companies within these sectors do not implement EPR schemes, they cannot continue to operate because they will not receive new environmental permits. As a result of this initiative here in the state, more than 6,000 companies are currently involved in EPR schemes in the state of São Paulo, and other states in Brazil are already following this good practice and starting to also require this demonstration in environmental permits procedure. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the profile of São Paulo state. São Paulo is a very the most industrialized state in Brazil. So the difficulty to continue to operate in such a state is a very high burden for those companies that do not comply with EPR rules.
Well, great stuff, Leon. Thank you so much. And then back here onto the stage with you, Lara, if I may. In a country the size of the US, what are the main challenges of setting up EPR systems across the breadth of the country? And what role does the federal government play in facilitating the introduction of EPR programs? Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm not sure how many people know this, but the United States does not have a national EPR law. And I think this has come about because we have national laws governing waste management, but much of our implementation happens at the state and local level. So it's really, waste management is a very local issue. Communities really think about it. They try to design their waste management systems to meet the needs of the community based on their resources. So what has grown in the United States is not a national level EPR, but rather a mini subnational EPR programs. And they exist for a variety of products like e-waste, paint, carpet, batteries, mattresses, and pharmaceuticals. And so in the past 2 decades, from about 91 to 2011, the United States enacted more than 70 subnational EPR laws, and about 24 states have EPR for different products. So it is very widespread in the United States, but it happens at a much different level. And you know, we're a large and disparate country. I think it just demonstrates the challenges that countries have in terms of, you know, it's not just dependent on, you know, a country making a decision, of course, but rather that, you know, we're working with the resources that we have at these local levels. And so in addition to what has been happening at the subnational level, you've had manufacturers really come out and start to implement voluntary EPR programs that collect recycled plastic, you know, including some thin film and PET bottles. And so we've had a lot of states, we've had stakeholders, they've been really exploring how to set up different types of EPR schemes because they do want to participate in this process of sort of, you know, bringing things back and being more environmentally friendly. And right now, as you know, as we're speaking, Maine, Oregon, and Colorado are really looking at different EPR laws for packaging.
Great. Thanks very much, Lara. And Bernard, you can tell that we're really enjoying this sense of the international community, all with different challenges and different ways of going about this. So you're in a great position with this final question on this round to answer this. In many developing countries, the informal sector has an important role in waste management. How best can we integrate their activities in EPR schemes? Thank you, Bernard.
Yeah, thank you very much that I can participate this evening. Maybe to start with this point, we should see that the informal sector is mainly looking on plastic or plastic waste, which has a specific value. So that's the reason why plastic waste is collected from the informal sector. But the rest of the plastic which has no value, remains uncollected. And so this is also one reason of the problems we have with the uncollected waste. So nobody has interest in this waste and will collect it for recycling. And also we will have for the informal sector, a price risk, because if virgin material is becoming cheaper, so there is no interest for the informal sector to collect this plastic waste for recycling, and they might lose their source of income. So this is also dangerous here. So what is very important now is that by establishing an EPR system, we are shifting the focus from collecting materials with a positive market value to a service, to providing a service to the population by collecting, sorting, or recycling. That means that we have now another income, that is the license fee, and we have a new structure, that's the structure of the EPR systems. And here we have the great opportunity to offer the possibility for the informal sector to become where the workers can be socially and economically integrated in the waste management system. So they can get permanent jobs, they can become, or the EPR system or the waste management system can be a source of regular income, and also providing better living standards here, because you can then regulate the waste management system with specific social criteria and working criteria here. So that's very important, that we need the shift here. And another positive aspect here is that all plastic waste, according to the definition of an EPR system, will then be collected and treated, and not only the material which has an economic value. But we have to consider that the situation is very different from country to country, and the informal sector is also organized in a very different way from country to country. So it's very important to look, if we are looking at the establishment of an EPR system, we have to look at the specific situation in a country, and it's very, very important to involve the informal sector or representatives of the informal sector as important stakeholder while designing a new EPR system in a country, because they have a lot of knowledge regarding the collection and treatment of waste, and if there are existing enterprises, they can be integrated into the EPR system, so they can be act as a formal partner, or collectives of independent informal workers can join then into formal agreements. So to our position from WWF, it's very beneficial to establish an EPR system, but you have to look very carefully at the existing situation, and you have to provide a very intensive stakeholder dialogue while implementing a national-wide EPR legal framework here. So, WWF has provided for some countries detailed studies here. So if you put WWF and EPR project in your search engine, so you will find a detailed study which is also considering activities with the informal sector here, to emphasize the importance of the local situation here. Thank you.
Well, Bernhard, thank you very much indeed. Well, you've eloquently there wrapped up our first round of planned questions, and now we can open it to the audience. I have a promise here to Brian, and Brian, come on, let's have your question. Is it to everybody or to someone in particular?
It can be to everybody. Hi, for those who know me, and for those who don't know me, I'm Brian Wilson, and I've spent the 15 years of my life managing a recycling plant, Ross knows very well, and the past 22 years promoting recycling. I just want to say that I'm a great advocate and a great fan of EPR, so you've not got an enemy here. But I just want to say to you that when I'm talking to governments about EPR and recycling batteries in particular, the multitude of battery chemistries there are, I actually use 5 systems. Ross mentioned 4. I have 5. I just want you, before you close off on plastics, to consider the 5th element, and that is substitution. And you heard in the plenary session today, Bangladesh talking about the problems they had in banning single-use plastics. And I say to you, this is something you need to take on board. Give you some examples. On aircrafts, you get tons of plastics, knives and forks. Our local supermarkets now provide plastics. No, they don't. They provide wooden knives and forks if you want them. The other thing is that I'm a chemist, and for single-use plastics whereby they wrap food up, then I know that you can make plastics disposable, degradable by using, for example, potato starch. So I'll just ask you to consider substitution as a EPR. So the responsibility of plastic manufacturers that manufacture single-use plastics, their responsibility is to find a biodegradable, environmentally sound, non-toxic substitute. Now that does mean that we also have to change our habits. So is there a case here for extended user responsibility?
Brian, great stuff. Makes lots of sense. So is there a response from Bernhard or Leah or anybody on the panel?
Yeah, maybe I can say a few words.
Thank you.
To this. It depends on the waste management system, how you then create, let's say, the requirements for the packaging waste or the packaging. because EPR is not only usable for plastic, but you can also use EPR for other means of other types of packaging, like cardboard boxes or things made out of paper. It's very important to have some kind of then value chain or end of life chain, so that's secured that this material is recycled. So you can recycle paper, you can recycle aluminium or steel, and or you can also recycle plastic. But if you have something of biodegradable material here, of course, it might be beneficial if there is no other chain for recycling. But if you have established a good recycling chain for a specific material, I think we should look how a material can be best or better recycled here or better collected.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bernhard. And Brian, thanks very much for the question. Costas, where are you? Costas has a question. Over to you, sir. Would you like the mic?
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for all the insights from the experts on the panel, of course, as well as University of Leeds here, dealing with the informal sector. I wonder, it has been highlighted already that it is an important opportunity, EPR, to transform the role of the informal sector and prevent the plastics pollution. However, I wonder if you can demonstrate any single case that this has already been implemented around the world and implemented successfully, or we're starting from a very low base of understanding in that type of systems. And more specifically, we understand that the additional resources, financial resources that are going to enter into the system through EPR are going to make it more viable, but where these resources are going to be directed? Are we going to direct them to collect unrecyclable plastics to make them more recyclable? Are we going to direct them to improve the income of individual waste pickers and formal recyclers? Are we going to direct them into systems, chains to enable them get themselves organized and run enterprises and so on? Are going to enable them produce better quality materials? So there are so many needs in different aspects that are failing now, and there is competition between those needs to direct the money. So I wonder if there's any insights on where the additional funds should be directed on the EPR systems. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Costas. And someone like to take that?
Yes, yes, thank you. I think, yes, the needs are great, and we need to recognize that the role that waste pickers play. For us as South Africa, it's still early stages because we've just put in the regulations, but to ensure that we don't lose them as a stakeholder, we made sure that November 2022, the PROs need to ensure that there is a collection service fee that goes to waste pickers. And we've learned from most of the South American states in terms of how they've ensured that service fees come down to waste pickers. So that is an issue for us. In terms of how do we ensure that we direct, the funds to where it's needed, we are trying to be simple as a start, because yes, we know that some of the advanced economies have made use of eco-modulation and so on. But if we try and pursue those, it might overwhelm the system. But just for us to start, and of course, we need transparency in the setting of fees in terms of the budget, such that those that are introducing products that are very complicated to recycle can also bear the costs proportionally. So those are some of the considerations that we are having.
Thank you very much, Mama Hala. Daniel? Yes.
Yeah, I can also add some examples from the e-waste space. Maybe it's interesting to kind of see where we have more links in different sectors, actually. We did a paper actually 2 years ago with the STEP initiative, where we try to map where are the different initiatives around the world where you can bring informal sector collectors and link them into an EPR system. And you can do this with a PRO. The results, I think, are a bit mixed. So some countries have tried, some actors have tried, some PROs have tried, but and sometimes it works very well. So I know Reverse Logistics Group is doing interesting things in Peru with the emails there, and you have as well in India other models with Karosamba, for instance. These are PROs who have integrated the informal sector into a collection setup. And at the same time, the legislation has to say, you know, there's a role for these actors in the system. And I think this is very important that it's defined. And there's an example of how this has been done in the Ghana e-waste bill as well. They define tier 1 collectors. They can be informal, they can organize, they bring to a collection point, and then they are given a role in the EPR system. At the same time, maybe it's also a case in plastic recycling, you maybe have some dangerous recycling activities as well. And these need to be either upgraded or reduced, because these are informal activities that can't continue, at least in the e-waste space. On plastics, I think there's also the topic of plastic credits. I mentioned before, there's many countries where it takes maybe 5 to 10 years to get the EPR system running. There may be other countries where we don't even see a future for EPR in the next 20 years. And I think these kind of mechanisms, they're coming, they need to be completely complementary to EPR and not take away the motivation to set up an EPR system. But in the meantime, it's maybe one way to start to get some finance going, to start getting infrastructure in place, some kind of administrative actions happening. And this is also something where you can link up to collection networks from informal sector and bring some financing from externals into the system. And this is another place where the Prevent Waste Alliance is doing a lot of research at the moment in different countries.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, yes, Leah, go ahead.
Thank you. Related to the informal sector, we also have a very broad informal sector here in Brazil historically, and they were included in EPR schemes in our country. So EPR schemes invested for several years a lot of money in these cooperatives. It's like low income people companies, and they received a lot of infrastructure equipment in order to be able to segregate more material, to recycle more, and also a lot of support to be more professional, to be in compliance with labor laws and with taxes. And nowadays we only receive results from EPR schemes that are validated by or official documents that prove that they paid taxes in Brazil, so they are very reliable. So we are sure that those amount of waste was actually recycled. So all these tools were used for involving the informal sector in our EPR schemes.
Well, thank you very much, Leah. Well, I'm acutely aware that we stand between you and the celebratory drinks and food, but there's a burning question at the back, is that right? Ah, yes, go ahead. Would you like the mic?
So I'm an Indian delegate and Satyendra, director from the Ministry of Environment, Government of India. Would like to just highlight a few things that went in discussion, and would like to put forward one very important aspect when we talk about EPR. The first and foremost thing that we have felt about EPR is having a strong regulatory framework. And when we say strong regulatory framework, it should be an enabling and implementable framework, and wherein the options of how to go about the EPR collection mandate and recycling mandate is a separate part. Having said that, I'd like to just present that India got its EPR guidelines on plastic packaging waste recently notified. and wherein it puts forth the responsibility on the producers of the plastic packaging waste to get back all those things. Why I am repeating the same thing, which is well understood across the globe, is that the EPR guidelines has to put in place a mechanism wherein in case of non-compliance, something may happen to the producer of that packaging material which has put that product in the market. Now, the second part then comes in that how to go about collecting those, and then there can be many options. It's just like we have been trying to convince and make the companies understand that when you are going to put a product in the market, it is a business proposition that you are coming forward with. Now you will have to go and get that business proposition aligned with an environmental sustainability mandate. And this is what that we are trying to bring forth, that you get all those costs with regard to that EPR collection and recycling or end-of-life disposal included in that business mandate. Having said this, what I mean is that instead of focusing on in what ways the companies are going to collect and then recycle or dispose of the plastic waste, is something that is left out to different models. And this is such what we are envisaging and anticipating, that it will open up very new kinds of business models which will take care of the integration of the informal sector in their unique and many different ways. And I would like to add on to what Ross highlighted in his opening remarks, that this EPR mandate has to clearly mention about the reuse of recycled content. And that India's guidelines mandate that for the rigid plastic, for the flexible plastic, we had made certain categorization, and we have given the mandate that the recycled content has to go into making of the plastic packaging that the producer is going to put again in the market. Apart from many such mandatory objective provisions that we have put in, that you will have to go for 80% of whatever you are going to recycle. And as Mr. Rolf Pai was mentioning, that in 70s, we used to see the glass bottles. This EPR mandate of India talks about reuse of the in the category of rigid packaging, where you'll have to get back to the reuse of that plastic packaging to a certain extent, which in turn would help push the adoption of those sustainable packaging material. There are several aspects of it. And lastly, I'd like to add that I very much concur and second and echo the proposal made by Ross, that there should be a EPR plastic forum, wherein the countries which have got these things implemented in recent times, and the countries which want to implement it, they can come together, share their experiences, make this system so robust that it is a win-win for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And one thing I've learned about this is from a communication perspective, EPR is a great subject, and I only wish that there was the members of the public who don't know anything about this were just here to hear the passion and the stories and the ideas as to how this works. And it's interesting. It reminds me a bit of ESG investing. I used to arrive at these ESG investing conferences all over the world, mostly Wall Street, London, Geneva, Zurich, Paris, and everybody was talking about ESG investing as if it was never going to happen, as if it was something out there and the big pension funds and all the rest would never get stuck in. And we all wanted the general public and everybody to realize that in those early days, even the smart natural capital and nature-based investments were often the safest, they were often the best returns. And as soon as they become fashionable and desirable, people bought into them, and there was an enormous change. I feel the same thing happening here. I can imagine reflecting back on this meeting today and your idea, Ross, and your initiative, and all these great comments we received from the panelists and from you, thinking back on yeah, that was when people were thinking it had to happen, but would we ever get there? So that's my very non-technical summary. I enjoy these sessions a lot. We now need to move on because I'm even more acutely aware that I'm between you and the celebratory drinks and our closing ceremony and all the rest of it. So thanks very much. And as I always say when I'm with the press, but for the work of everybody here, we will be living in an out of control global chemistry experiment. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about going a bit over time.